Hi, this is Krista at The Secret Yarnery. Today we're making these awesome 2-hour slippers. What is so great about these slippers is we start on the toe and they're just double crochet, so they go super quick using 2 strands of yarn. You can do them with regular acrylic, regular craft acrylic, but they're a bit knobbly to step on. But if you use chenille or velvet yarn with an acrylic, they're super soft and squishy inside, so they don't bother your feet whatsoever. They're just so comfortable and delicious. But I've made plenty with just 2 strands of regular acrylic, and they're also just fine. So use whatever you have on hand. They're also super customizable. You can vary how big you want the toe to be. This is one section that we work on, so you just keep building this until it is the depth you want. So you can make them for a man or a small child or yourself. And then you just make them as long as you need to fit the foot that you are fitting them to. To do baby slippers, you would just start with 2 stitches less. So instead of doing 10 double crochets to start, you would do 8. So that's it. Let's get started. To make the super easy 2-hour slippers, I'm using 2 balls of yarn, one just regular craft acrylic like a Super Saver, and one is like a Bernat blanket or a velvet kind of yarn. We call it chenille. I'm not sure what you call it. It depends on where you are, but it's just one of those super soft, fuzzy yarns that you don't know what to do with. It's a bit fragile, but if you put it together with the acrylic, it makes a really nice slipper. So we're going to make one of these, so you have a pair. And 2 balls of yarn make 1 pair of slippers. You'll have a little bit left over, or I do for my kind of yarn, depending on the yardage, because it varies per ball. And we're just going to be working with both of these strands at the same time. And I'm using a 5.5 millimeter hook. You can use anywhere between a 5 and a 6 millimeter, whatever goes along with your yarn. You want it on the smaller side. So we're going to start by making a magic ring. And how to do that? You just put the tails over your non-dominant hand and hold them down on your ring finger with your thumb. Wrap them around your top 2 fingers, making an X. And bring it around so you also hold it underneath your thumb. Turn your hand over. You have a long strand and a short strand. Take your hook side facing down, put it underneath the short strand, grab the long strand, bring it under, point the hook towards yourself, point the hook away from yourself. Now I'm relaxing my thumb, so I'm letting that yarn slide. Grab the long strand, turn your hook and bring it through the loop on your hook. And there is your magic ring. Like that. So that is how we're going to start. If that's hard for you, there's another tutorial video I'll put in the description box below where you can practice it, or you can do a chain 3 and make a regular ring. It's just a bit tricky to get all of the double crochets into the one spot, so this is the easiest way for me. So chain 1, and now wrap your yarn, and we're going to go into the ring and over the tail. So I'm going to be holding the tail along that top part of the ring, and I'm going to be doing all of my stitches here. So we're going to make 10 double crochets. So get your ring all behaving itself. That takes a bit of time. It's a bit tricky. Like that. And then into the ring, 1 double crochet. Like that. So there's our chain 1 and our first double crochet. And now wrap your yarn, and we're going to make 9 more. So wrap your yarn and go into the ring, grab your yarn and bring it back. Wrap your yarn and take off 2. Wrap your yarn and take off 2. And let me just show you that in slow motion. So now we have 3 double crochets into the center of our ring. We need to make 7 more. So 7 more double crochets into the ring and going over your tail. And you can count that you have your 10. You can just wiggle your fingers in between these. Don't count that chain in the beginning. Whatever mess is on the beginning, you don't count that. But you'll see one real lumpy bit after. That's your first stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So when you're sure you have your 10, grab your tail and you're going to give it a big pull. We're going to close up that center ring. There we go. That's going to be the very tip of our toe. And we just want it to be shut. Like that. And I bring it kind of to the front of my work and I put my hook under it. I just want it like looped up on my hook. And now we're going to slip stitch to the first real double crochet. So we did a chain 1, so it's not this weird V on the side. It's this one right at the top. That V right at the top. So just make a slip stitch, so bring your yarn back and bring your yarn through. So there's our slip stitch. And I'm going to work over this tail a bit, so now I'm going to pull it again, make sure it's tight, and just lay it on the side of my work so I can crochet over it as I go along a little bit. Chain 1 to get some height. And now into each stitch, we're going to do 2 double crochets. So I go into the one right after, and we're going to make 2 double crochets into that stitch. So there's 1, and here's 2. Wrap your yarn into the next stitch, 2 double crochets, and 2 double crochets into each stitch, going all the way along. Work over that tail as much as you can. If it's awkward for you, don't worry about it. We can sew it in later. And now each of these stitches going along the side, this is a stitch here, like all these little V's that are facing you. So we're going to put our hook in right alongside the front of our work and just pick up each one of those V's. We're going to make 2 double crochets into each of these spots, working all the way around the circle. So we're going to go right into the front. We want that V on our hook. So we're going to do that for each one and 2 double crochets into each. And I'll meet you at the join. So there's my 20. So we're going to slip stitch to join, and we're going to slip stitch right here on this stitch on the side. That is our stitch. So we're just going to go right in there and slip stitch like that. Through and through. So there's our slip stitch. Chain 1 to get a little bit of height. So now for the next 4 or 5 rows, depending on how big you want your slipper to be, we're just going to put 1 double crochet into each stitch. So wrap your yarn, and we're going to go right into this little tiny bit right after our chain. We're going to make 1 right into this kind of spot, or into the beginning of this stitch. 1 double crochet where we did our chain 1. Make sure we get it. There we go. And 1 into each of these stitches going along. So I'm still just picking up this V that's looking at me. I'm just going right underneath there and picking up each of those. I'm making 1 double crochet into each V. Like that. So now keep going along, 1 double crochet into each of these stitches going around, and I'll meet you when we get close to that join. So there's our 20 stitches, and you can see that it's turning into a little dish, which is what we want. You can count that you have 20. So we're going to slip stitch again to join. So I'm just going to go in to that next stitch, bring my yarn back, turn my hook, bring my hook through, and chain 1 again to get my height. And we're going to keep going like that. So we can count our rows. If you just make it flat here's 1, and then this is 2, and this is 3. So we're gonna do as many rounds as we want to cover our toes. So this is how it fits on those are my toes, and here is my foot in all its glory. So you're gonna keep going until it just kind of covers your toes. So you can't see your toes, like it's gonna stay on your foot. You don't want it to like be falling off. And you've also, and you can have it up as much as you want for whatever kind of boot style you want, but I like a little bit of a lower front part. So this is 6 rows. So we did our chain 1. Now we just do 1 double crochet into each. I've gone around, so I'm gonna slip stitch to join. So we're gonna go into the first real, this one here, that's the top of this first double. If you wiggle your fingers in there, you can separate that first real post, and then on top of it, this guy here, that's your first stitch. So you wanna go into that one with your slip stitch. So bring your yarn through and bring your yarn through and chain 1. Now keep going, doing the same thing, 1 double crochet into each double crochet for 1, 2, 3, 4, for 2 more rounds, for a total of 6 rounds if you're making for a lady, or 7 rounds if you're making for a man, or 1 more row if you're making for a child. And make sure you get into this last stitch. You need 20. So 20 double crochets per round, and slip stitch to the top of this chain to join. So it's the top of this first double crochet or the chain 2, depending which way you're counting it. So slip stitch into there, chain 1, and now 1 double crochet into each stitch, going all the way around, and make sure you have 20. You don't want to be losing any stitches. So there's 5 rounds, 20 stitches. Slip stitch to the top of that first double crochet to join, or the chain 2 going up. A little slip stitch in there, chain 1, and now keep going, 1 into each stitch for a total of 20. There's my 20 double crochets going around. Don't worry if it looks like it's getting like smaller. As long as you have your 20 stitches, that is fine. So we're gonna slip stitch. Here is our first V, and there's our second. So we're just gonna slip stitch right underneath there. So slip stitch, chain 1 like we always do, but now we're going to start doing something a bit different. It's the 12 Day of Christmas giveaway. We're just sneaking them into the 12 videos before Christmas, and today I'm giving away the yarn to make the slippers. Plus inside the kit is the instructions and a Kenyan crochet hook. So this is going to the lucky winner. How you are going to enter is by putting a comment in the comment box below, telling me what your favorite Christmas color scheme is, or holiday color scheme. If you do not celebrate Christmas, it's totally fine. But what is your festive colorway or your color scheme that you tend to love the most during your holidays? Leave that in the comments box below. You have 12 chances to enter. You can also enter the left-hand versions of the video, but for the 2-hour slippers, I will be picking a winner from both the left-hand and right-handed combined. So there'll be 1 winner, but I will draw 1 for the left-handed video and 1 from the right-handed video, and then pick a name between those 2 lucky viewers. So good luck. I really hope you have a chance to win and a chance to enter all the other giveaways we have during the 12 days of Christmas. Good luck and stay hooked. Turn your work. So instead of going up and working around like we were, just turn it the other way. We're gonna work back along our work. So into this very first stitch, which is right here, we're doing a double crochet, and into the next one, which is there and here, it's these little dimples. They're a bit harder to see because I have so much yarn, but they're just these little dimples there. We're gonna go in and get our yarn, our loops of yarn on our hook in each of those. So 1 double crochet into each. There is our first double crochet, and into the next one right there, one double crochet. Our stitches look a bit different, but if you tip it up, you can see you have that V on your hook in both of those yarn colors. So that's what you want to look for. Into each one double crochet. Each stitch gets one double crochet. Now when we're getting around, we want to leave 6 of these stitches empty. And how I count them, this would be my first stitch here. So complete V's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and here is number 6. So we're going to leave all 6 of those open. That's going to be the top of our slipper. So now we're going to work back the other way. So chain 1, turn your work, and now we're going to go back along this side. So our first stitch goes right into our first stitch right there. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way along. Each of those dimples is getting a double crochet. Now we have 2 double crochets left, so we have to do 2 double crochets. This one looks normal, so let's go into that one because we're sure that one's a stitch. And now you have one more to do. It's on this slope. It's on like the end of the hill, but you just have to get your hook in there and make 1 double crochet into that hillside. So wrap your yarn and just go into the top of that stitch and make 1 double crochet. And you'll see that gives us a nice straight edge, which is what we want. Chain 1, turn your work, and go back. So if you're making an adult slipper, you will do this back and forth here for 6 more rows, or for 6 rows in total, so 4 more rows because we've done 2 together. If you're doing it for a smaller person, you will be doing less rows, maybe 3 or 4 rows, but meet me back when you have 6 rows done for a lady or 7 rows done for a man, and I'll show you what our little trick is for contouring the heel. So we did 6 rows for the toe, and we've done 6 rows for the bottom. Now we're ready to start contouring up to our heel. So how we do that is we just put 1 extra stitch at the end of each row. So I'm just going to go into this stitch down below here, the one on the side, little slopey bit on this hill. I'm going to make that into a stitch. So just wrap your yarn and push your hook in there any which way you can. Grab your yarn and bring it back. Wrap your yarn and take off 2. Wrap your yarn and take off 2. So we just added 1 stitch onto that end. So chain 1, turn your work, and go back. So that is what we're going to do at the end of each of these rows. And we're going to keep going now, just adding that 1 stitch at the end until our slipper is the length of our foot. So this one I've already finished, so I need to do 2 more rows, it looks like 2 more rows, of increasing. You can kind of see how we're building up for these last few rows. It just kind of comes up for our heel. So this is along the center of our foot, and this comes along our heel. So this is what we're going to do for the next 3 rows, or for as many rows as it is to make your slipper the same size as or the same length as your foot. So keep going, and I will meet you at the end of this row just so we can pick that extra stitch together. So into our last stitch, the one that's regular, double crochet, and now we're going to go somewhere back in there again to make 1 extra stitch. Doesn't totally matter where, just find a spot. You want to make sure you have at least, you know, the 2 loops of yarn on your hook. You don't want to do it through just a tiny strand. You want it to be through a nice solid piece. So now keep going until your slipper is the length of your foot. So there is my 9 rows for the bottom of my shoe. So I did 6 for the toe and 9 for underneath my foot, and it just reaches the back of my heel. So this is when you want to pause the video and go ahead and make a second one exactly the same. You want to make sure you do that now before you've stitched them shut, because it's easier to count your rows and know exactly how big you made them. If you stitch one together and go to make the other, it can be difficult to judge how many rows you did in this bottom section. But that's just my tip. You can do as you wish. So now we're going to cut our tails, and we're going to cut them. The chenille I'm going to cut off reasonably short, just so I can sew it in with a needle. And the acrylic I am going to leave long because I want to sew it together. So maybe about 18 inches of that yarn. So now we can just finish this off. You just bring your yarn through like a chain 1 and pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug this down. We're not inside outing our slipper yet. We're going to do that after we sew it together. So right now just leave it as it is, and we're just going to whip stitch this seam here. We're just going to stitch that together. So from the one side, find that matching stitch on the other side, so just the corner, because this is the corner of one side, so go into the corner of the other and just whip them together. So whip stitch means we're just going to be going back and forth, but always from one side to the other side, and then back and doing it the same way again. So from the side closest to us, through that stitch, through the stitch on the other side, and pull it through. I'm just going to work over that tail a little bit. So into that stitch on both sides, and over that tail a smudge, into that stitch, into the stitch closest to us and the stitch farthest away, closest to us, farthest away, and work over your tail a bit. Closest to us, farthest away. Closest to us, farthest away. When you get to the bottom, just go over that twice. So make 2 whip stitches into that spot. You can bring the tail back up if you want to. And now we can whip stitch the other way going back up. So from the side farthest away from you. And now at the top, I do a little extra because this is where you're going to be pulling it on and off your heel. And you can kind of make a little knot. And now I'm going to weave my tail back down so I can cut it off. I'm just going to go into the fat part as best I can. So that one we can cut off, and our other tail we can cut off. And there is our little slipper. So now is a great time to try it on, and also we can inside it out. But before we do that, we should weave in these tails here. So just give these ones a quick weave in. I'm just going to take them back the opposite direction of where they came from. Now we are ready to inside it out. Let's poke it through. And this is how your slipper looks. And there's our nice join. You can't really see any of our whip stitching. And it goes up for our heel, so it'll hug our heel really nice. So now you can do the same thing for your second slipper. So there's two slippers, they're both inside out, so our whip stitch is inside. And now we're just gonna put an edge around the area so it doesn't stretch out and it can also look cute. I'm gonna use this chenille for doing the trim just around the edge to make it look nice and finished. And I wanna join somewhere on the back of the slipper, not where we join, not part of the seam, but just on either side. So I'm just gonna push my hook in to one of those loops. Loop of yarn on your hook, bring it through, slip stitch with both to join, drop your tail, and now work straight over into the next strand of yarn to make one single crochet. And we can work over our tail. So each of these rows, so this is a row in here, and that's a row in between these division lines. Each of those is going to get 2 single crochets. You can do 3, it's between 2 or 3, but for me, I do 2. So that is into this one, so this next guy over here, 1 and 2. So I'm just pushing in underneath one of those loops. So I have 2 strands of yarn on my hook, but it's like one strand, one part of a stitch. So push your hook in, grab your yarn and bring it back, wrap your yarn and take off 2. So there's 2 single crochets in that area. So now this area is going to get 2 single crochets as well. So I'm going to pick up this strand here, loop my tail over on top of my work, single crochet into that, and then I'll pick up this one down, oops, and then I'll pick up this one down here, tail, work over my tail as well, single crochet. So each of these rows gets 2 single crochets, and you can work over your tail about halfway down the side of your slipper. Now I'm going to drop my tail, and you can look along the side of your slipper and just check that there's not too many single crochets, it's not like rippling up, that it's still laying a bit flat. This is going to keep your slipper from stretching out. For this row right before it starts the top of our slipper, we need to put in 2 single crochets. So you put in the first single crochet and then start the second single crochet anywhere really. Doesn't totally matter, just get your hook in, start a single crochet but leave it on your hook. So there's 2 loops of that stitch on my hook, and then jump over to the front, to the top of your slipper, and this first stitch here, that's where we're going to go in and make another single crochet. We're going to start a single crochet. So push your hook into that first stitch, grab your yarn and bring it back. So now there's 3 loops of yarn on your hook. Wrap your yarn and take off all 3. So that is a single crochet decrease that we do in the corner, just so it lays nice and flat on your foot. Going across the top of our shoe or our slipper, 1 single crochet into each stitch. And our stitches just look regular right here, 1, 2, 3. And this one, we're going to do a decrease again when we get over there. So we're going to do 1 single crochet into each stitch until we only have 1 stitch left. When we have 1 stitch left, we're going to go in and make our single crochet or start our single crochet. Leave those loops on our hook. We're not going to finish it. And now kind of rotate your work so we can start a single crochet on the side of our slipper. 3 loops of yarn on your hook. Wrap your yarn and take off all 3 loops. So that's a single crochet decrease, and 1 more single crochet into that row. So that row still has 2 single crochets, and 2 single crochets into each of these rows going all the way up the side. So just go into the heel as best you can, making your single crochets as often as you feel you need to. You at least have to put 1, maybe 2 into that heel section. So now we're going to slip stitch into the top of this single crochet. It's hard to see with this fuzzy yarn, but just into the corner that we made, just into that nice little shelf. Push your hook in and slip stitch to join. Chain 1, and now we're going to cut our yarn. Leave a long enough tail so you can sew it in, and if you're using like a velvet yarn or a chenille like I am, leave a longer tail because it can kind of be difficult and fall apart a bit when you sew it together, or when you sew in your end. So hook up and yarn through and snug that down to secure. And there is one slipper with a nice little edging, and I'll show you how to put on a cute little flower. And leave a bit of a tail. We were going to use that for sewing on your flower. So make a chain 3 using the same hook and your acrylic yarn or your center color. This is going to be the center of our flower. Chain 3, 1, 2, and 3. And into the first chain, so that's this V down here, into this V right there, it's going to put your hook in. Lay your tail along beside and open up that U shape with your fingertip and your thumb, and bring your yarn through both loops. So that forms a ring. Chain 1, and we're going to make 6 single crochets into the ring and going over the tail. So there's 1, 2, and 6. And now slip stitch into that first stitch we made. You can count back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we can just slip stitch into the top of that first single crochet we made. So bring your yarn through and bring your yarn through. Chain 1, and now we can cut our yarn. Again, we can leave a long tail or a few inches, so we can use this for tying on our flower to our slipper. So just push your hook into any stitch, just into any of these V's. It doesn't matter which one. Push your hook in, loop of yarn on your hook, bring your hook through, slip stitch with both to join. Drop your tail, chain 1, wrap your yarn, 1 double crochet into the same stitch, chain 1, and slip stitch into that same stitch. So that's made one of our little petals. Chain 1, wrap your yarn, double crochet into the next stitch. 1, chain 1, and slip stitch into the same stitch. Chain 1, double crochet into the next stitch. Chain 1, slip stitch into the same stitch. Chain 1, double crochet into the next stitch. Chain 1, slip stitch into the same stitch. So we're just building little petals. Chain 1, and we'll just keep going like this around our center into the next stitch. 1 double crochet, chain 1, and slip stitch into the same stitch. Slip stitch, chain 1, double crochet into the next stitch, chain 1, and slip stitch. Chain 1, double crochet into the next stitch, chain 1, slip stitch into the same stitch. So that's our last petal. Chain 1, and we can cut our yarn. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down. And there we have a cute little flower to put on our slipper. So you can decide where you want your flower to be. And then I just thread these tails we have and look where they're coming out and just poke it into your slipper. Just like that. And then the next one, I'll do the same thing. Just look where it is and poke it down inside. And I've just put those tails down inside the toe. So now we can flip it over and give these tails a bit of a knot. And then just cut them off. Flip it out, and there is your super cute slipper. So now do the exact same thing on the other slipper and you're ready to go. When you're putting the second flower on, make sure you put it on the opposite side of your other shoe. You don't want to put them both on the same. You want to make them cute. Just like keep it in mind. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I'd love to see your slippers. You can tag me on Instagram at Secret Yarnery and also join our Facebook group if you're on Facebook, the Secret Yarnery Crochet Community. Love to see your slippers. They work up really quick. Your second pair will take about half an hour each, so probably about 1 hour. They're really fast, so charming, and they're so easy to make in different sizes for your family. So thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, subscribe by hitting the button down below. We upload new videos almost every weekday at 6 p.m. Central. Stay hooked.
You